spent on his island. And of course, the island is where he abused many underage girls.
A nursery group says it's carrying out a review after a member of staff pleaded guilty to dozens of sex offences against children in North London. Vincent Chan worked at Bright Horizons in northwest London, which is now closed. The Kremlin's denied claims Vladimir Putin's rejected the US proposals for peace in Ukraine. Talks between the Russian president and officials from the US yesterday failed to reach a breakthrough. And the Prime Minister's announced plans to help parents access baby formula at more affordable prices. Updated guidance will tell supermarkets to accept coupons and vouchers. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 9 points at 96.92. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.14. LBC weather, a band of rain moving in from the southwest tonight, a low of 1 degree. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening and welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. You're listening to LBC. It's 3 minutes past 8. Joining me on the panel, to my left, Chris Curtis, Labour MP for Milton Keynes North. He's the co-chair of the Labour Growth Group. Theresa Villiers, to my right, is former Conservative MP and Cabinet Minister. To her right, Jim Shannon, DUP MP for Strangford. And over to my far left, possibly politically as well, Matthew Torbitt, former Labour advisor, homelessness campaigner, and he works with the Centre for Social Justice. They are here to answer your questions on 0345 6060 973. And we'd love you to watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Let's go to our first question. It's from Scott in West Hampstead, who says, is it time for the government to be open and honest with the British public about the threat to Europe posed by an increasingly belligerent Russia, which has rejected the latest US peace plan? And does the government now need to fully implement the recommendations of the Strategic Defence Review and massively increase Britain's defence spending in line with many of its NATO European allies? Chris?
I suppose I'm going to have to start by rejecting the premise of the question. I think we have been very honest and open with people right across this country about the increased threat that is being posed to Europe from Russian aggression. It's important to state at this point as well that we stand with Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, and it's important in this peace process, much as it is, that Ukraine ultimately has the final say on what happens within Ukraine. But the wider question is, I think, an important one. We know that we have been lucky in recent years. It may not have always felt like it, but to have lived through a period of relative peace in Europe. That was not been true for most of Europe's history, and unfortunately not something that we can certainly rely on for the decades to come. And ultimately what that means is the UK, but not just the UK, countries right across the continent are going to have to quite dramatically increase our spending on defence to ensure that we are better able to defend and protect ourselves, particularly in a context where we cannot rely on the US, which has other threats that they're facing and responding to, from China in particular. We are going to have to think about how we can stand on our own 2 feet better, and that is going to, yes, involve increasing defence spending, which involves lots of hard decisions about tax and spend here at home. But also
not a mention of it in the budget.
But also, well, we have increased defence spending and made quite difficult decisions in order to do so. But I think far more importantly as well is not just increasing spending, but ensuring that we are reforming the way our defence sector in the UK works, so that it is more able to respond to the threats of the future, not the threats of the past. So that involves thinking about cyber, that involves thinking about drones, and less of the sort of older, more tired technology that we may have relied on with some wars.
I suppose what Scott, I think, is getting at is that if, as Keir Starmer says, we should be thinking as if we are at war or war is imminent and getting ourselves effectively on a war footing, I don't see any urgency in terms of increasing defence spending. I think it's gone up to 2.6% of GDP. But it needs there needs to be a dramatic rise and very quickly, because you can't just turn on a tap and get weapons in the next 6 months. You've got to be ordering them now.
Yeah, but in fairness, that is quite a dramatic rise. But yes, no,
0.1%.
It's not just we're spending dramatically more money on defence than we have done in recent decades. I agree that is probably the start of a trajectory, not the end of a trajectory. But what I think is important in this conversation, because it often gets missing, that you have people here and they go, let's just spend X% of GDP on something. That's not going to cut it unless we ensure that money is being effectively spent on actually providing us with the technology to fight the wars as they are now, not as they were decades ago. And that involves reforming a lot of the ways the Department of Defence thinks, for example, to ensure that that's actually delivered.
Theresa.
My answer to the question would be yes. We do need to be more open and upfront about the need for more defence spending. And of course, I welcome the announcement that was made a while back by the Prime Minister. But I think you do make a fair point in that we're not seeing the urgency that we need to on this. And of course, this was something that the Conservatives sort of sounded the alarm on in the general election. And that was an important part of our platform, that we saw the urgent need for an increase in defence spending.
Having been in power for 14 years and reduced it.
Well, we had been steadily increasing it towards the end of our term, and we were committed to do more. But I think there should be consensus across the political parties that, you know, as Chris says, we're in a different security era to the one that we were living through sort of a decade ago. Things have changed. And they've also, of course, changed across the Atlantic as well. The Americans for years were telling us all in Europe we needed to look more, we needed to spend more on our own defence. You know, the UK always has committed more resources than other European nations, but it's time for all members of NATO to step up, and there are signs that they are starting to do it. But declarations is one thing, and actually getting the equipment bought and expanding army numbers.
I think I'll believe it
crucial
when Italy goes above its current 1.2% of GDP.
Yes.
Matthew.
In theory, yes, I agree with what Theresa said. I don't, maybe more unsurprisingly, agree with much of what Chris has said. I think the concern for me is we do need an increase. It's not just as easy as that. Money is sparse, as we know. I think if we're back in 2008 and you've got a 36% debt to GDP ratio, things are a little bit easier when you're looking at increased defence spending on a dramatic scale. I think it depends what that looks like as well, though, because we live in an era where bullets and bombs is one thing, but it's not the main thing. We've got to be wary of biochemical weapons. There doesn't seem to be a week that goes by, one, without a warning that we are potentially close to war, and I start to worry that some people know something that lots of us don't, and that it is as imminent as maybe is portrayed. But I think, are we prepared? You know, super generative AI and stuff like that. I'm not sure whether we're ready for any of that, whether we have the capability to be ready for that, whether we would have to rely on people that wouldn't traditionally be allies. When you look at the Chinese, Donald Trump has shown more recently that he is not an ally that can be relied or depended on, and you have to worry where he would fall on certain issues. And finally, it's all well and good having the spending. I worry about how many people would actually go to war at points in this country. We see poll after poll of people, certainly amongst Gen Z and millennials, who, for whatever reason, whether it be they feel the social contract maybe is broken, whether they feel the country or their lives are worth fighting for. What am I fighting for? We live in an era where, you know, I look at my ancestors who were lying about their age to sign up to fight against the Nazis at age 15, and because there was an element of pride, and we really seem to be lacking that in this country. But
having said that, in the mid-1930s, I think there was a more sort of pacifist mood in the country, and that maybe particularly younger generations felt that. But when it came to it, people stood up to the plate.
I would hope that maybe is the case then, because it's something I worry about a lot, and I question many of my friends what they would do, whether it would be a case of fleeing and leaving it all behind, or you know, standing.
Well, you're in the age group.
I am, and I sympathise with a lot of how those people think. I think depending on the enemy, you've got to stand and be counted. There's a time to stand up and do the right thing. And if it means paying the ultimate for sacrifice, the reason many of us are sat here is because people did that. You have to remember that.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Ian. Belligerent Russia, I think that really sums it up for me. At the end of the day, war is changing, but there's still be tank battles. There's still be a need for soldiers on the ground. There's still be a need for the Royal Navy and the ships. There's still be a need for the aircraft in the air. I think the country that controls the air controls the battle, is my opinion, as someone who looks at it. I've served in the army 14 and a half years, a part-time soldier in Northern Ireland. It doesn't make me any better than anybody else, but it does. I always had a pride in uniform. I was always very pleased to be involved. But technology is changing, so it's more drones, it's more missiles, it's a different way of killing people. It reminds me that we have to move with those times as well. But our strengths, what's our strengths? Our strengths are our numbers are down. To be fair to the Labour Party, they have committed an extra percentage of GDP to building up defence. Remembering that in the 60s, I think it was, our defence spend was 7%. My goodness, guys, we're a long way off 7%. We probably need to be somewhere near that. Putin will puff and blow about what he wants to do, but the fact of the matter is you can't ignore him either. And he has the capability of starting a war. I think our strength is in NATO. I think we have to be more dependent upon ourselves. We can't fight a war by ourselves anymore. It's just too big. So we can only do that within NATO. I'd be with France and Germany and even puny Italy with their small contribution. But at the end of the day, the strength is NATO. Disappointed.
I think you and I have just lost our Italian audience, Jim.
Isn't it terrible? But I do say this: we do need the states inside as well, because they are the ultimate support that we need. I don't want to be too critical, but the fact is, Donald Trump will say one thing on a Monday and he'll say something different on Wednesday. So you're never really quite sure what his mind thinks. But he definitely did something in relation to solving the battles in the Middle East. He's trying really hard to solve the battles in Ukraine. Tomorrow there'll be a debate in Westminster tomorrow on Ukraine. Everybody will focus on some of the things we're talking about tonight, but we'll also focus, because I think we'll have to focus. I'll focus on this tomorrow. It's going to be my contribution to the debate, will be the massacres, the murders, the rapes of children as young as 8 and women as old as 80. The massacres in graves with 200 people, Bamuth, for one example. And the videos that show torture towards Ukrainian troops and shootings innocent civilians. What about all those missile attacks and drone attacks in Ukraine cities? They never seem to ever hit a military target, but they certainly hit all the flats with the people there. They blew up their businesses. So I think Russia needs to be called, and you asked that question earlier on, and my thoughts on that. They've put their drones, their missiles, their aircraft, they've encroached upon NATO territory. I brought this up at a meeting one time I was at, and I said, is it not time to give Russia a bloody nose? I think it is. Let them know that we're not taking it forward.
I don't understand why they don't shoot down these drones that circle like Brussels airport. Just shoot them down.
Exactly. I mean, it's simple.
But then I'm called a warmonger for saying things like that. So anyway, we'll move on to some other subjects in just a few moments' time with our panel. It's 8:15.
This is LBC.
They live
Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app.
16 minutes past 8, we have Chris Curtis, Labour MP for Milton Keynes, on the panel. Theresa Villiers, former Conservative MP and Cabinet Minister, Matthew Torbitt, former Labour advisor and homelessness campaigner, and Jim Shannon, Democratic Unionist Party MP for Strangford. Now, we were having a discussion before we came on air about the amount of speeches you make in the House of Commons, Jim, because you're not a shrinking violet, are you? Let's put it that way. In your 15 years in Parliament, you've made 7,232 contributions in terms of speaking. That averages out, if Parliament was sitting every day of the year, 483 a week. So in effect, a month. Is that right? No, a year. 483 a year. So if you double that up, I mean, you're basically speaking every day. Now, not many MPs can do that.
Well, every MP does it their own way. I want to be a voice for Strangford and a voice for Northern Ireland. I do my best to do that when I'm in the chamber, Westminster Hall, obviously. I also feel one of the things, like, we've got a lot of new MPs and I want to encourage the new MPs. I don't care who they are, by the way. Politics in the chamber doesn't really bother me very much. I see them as MPs who the people have elected to do a job. So whenever they have a debate, I'll probably go along to support them. I did that today with Daniel Zeitner, because Daniel Zeitner, as the minister, happened to come to my constituency at Portavogie, and he was well received by the fishermen, well received by the local community, and they still talk about him. So he had a debate today, and I said, you know something, I'm going to go down and support Daniel. And that's what I did. It was his.
Well, that's how Parliament should work.
Yeah, I think it should. That's me. Maybe see things a wee bit differently, but it's never done me any harm in my life. I remember, Iain, tell this quick story. Whenever I came on the council in 1985, many moons ago, I wanted to bring a notice of motion to the council, and it was the time of the Anglo-Irish Agreement, so feelings and tensions were high. And Simpson Gibson, who was the leader, he said to me, he says, Jim, see that man on the far side? Do you want to win him to your point of view? And I thought a bit hard, and I was young, I was cocky, and I goes, well, I'm not, I suppose I do. He says, well, you'll win him with sugar, you won't win him with vinegar. So I've kept that to my fore, and I've done that with everybody. I try not to fall out with people. I try to thank the ministers. They're not perfect, but they try to do their best. And if I have something to say, I'll always say with respect to the Honourable to the Minister. I think it's a way to have life and a way to interact with people. You can be different.
So, Theresa, when you were Secretary of State for Northern Ireland,
yes.
How did you, when Jim was making speeches, which I suspect at times were fairly critical of some of the things you may have been doing, did you see him any different to his colleagues because of the way that he approached his role in Parliament?
Jim, well, as he said, he's always very respectful, strikes a constructive tone. So even when I was being grilled on important matters, he always did it with a twinkle in the eye and with courtesy. And it wasn't just when I was in Northern Ireland Secretary. When I was first in government, I was Transport Secretary, and I assumed Jim must have this big interest in transport, because every time I answered a debate in Westminster Hall, there he was. And I only discovered afterwards, he's just always in Westminster Hall taking part in the debate.
And Chris Curtis, as a new MP, what lessons are you learning from Jim?
Well, I could never keep up with the amount of spoken contributions Jim says, I have to say. But I think actually that point about support, and it's true. Jim is always incredibly supportive of us as new members of Parliament. He'll often send us notes and is kind and is courteous, and I think really shows off the best of Westminster. We come from, I'm sure we disagree on many things, and we come from very different political traditions, but it does show that can be true. And yet you can work together respectfully and kindly, and just like you would in any other workplace.
Right, well, let's get back to some disrespect and have another question, shall we? Andrea is in Leighton. Hello, Andrea.
Yes, Iain, first-time caller to your show. Thank you very much, and your distinguished guests. Now, this is a very simple but important question. Do they think that Nigel Farage, cloth-cap Nigel, and Kenny Badenoch should bury the hatchet and unify their two parties into, let's call it, the Reform Unionist Party?
Well, I think there might have to be the word Conservative in there somewhere. Theresa Villiers, does this attract you as a prospect?
I'm afraid there was a glitch in my earphone.
Okay,
so you'll
right,
have
let
to
me
tell me
repeat
what the
it.
question was.
Should there be some sort of alliance between Reform and the Conservatives?
No, it's not on the cards. It's not going to happen. Reform have a left-of-centre economic policy. They want to remove the two-child benefit cap. They want to nationalise utilities. They want to reopen the South Wales coal mines. That means more borrowing, more tax, more spending. And there are a range of other ways in which the Conservatives are very different from Reform. Kemi's leading us with a good policy programme. She's succeeding every week at Prime Minister's questions. We are fighting to ensure that we're a credible contender at the general election in our own right, not as part of a Reform alliance.
But isn't it going to depend on the fact that the only way to beat the Labour Party, I mean, let's assume that things go back to sort of relative normality and that the government does maybe a little bit better than it's doing at the moment. You're going to have a choice at the next election, aren't you, between a left-of-centre party or coalition or a right-of-centre party or coalition. And surely from a Conservative point of view, you'd rather have a right-of-centre coalition governing than a left-of-centre one.
First past the post does inevitably mean that, when votes split in particular ways, you can end up with disproportionate results. I mean, Labour clearly benefited from that last time round with the split of the vote between the Reform and the Conservatives. But Reform are a one-man band. I don't believe that they're serious, for example, about the matters we were talking about just now on security. Nigel Farage blamed the West for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Reform may be getting a lot of headlines, but if you look...
Did he really? I don't remember that. Did he really
yes, he did. Yes. He said they provoked, that the West had effectively provoked the Russian invasion. There are a whole range of ways in which Reform's policy programme is defective, and they've swept to power in some of these local councils. And what are they doing? They're just hiking up taxes and breaking their promises. I really believe that the Conservatives need to succeed on our own merits, on our own policy programme. We've got a great team. We don't need Reform.
And if they don't, Ian, would you serve in a government, Theresa? Because the way I see it, it's a long way to go. I'm sure there may be same leaders, different leaders, all sorts of stuff. I can't help but think there'll be a hung parliament, one way or another. Maybe it'd be Labour and the Lib Dems, maybe it'd be Reform and the Tories. And you did such a good job in transport, Kemi Badenoch believes, in Northern Ireland, that she says, we're going to have a coalition. And we want you to come back. Would you serve for the benefit of the country, or is that too far for you?
Well, the slight hurdle in that plan is I'm actually not an MP any longer.
If the good people chicken ban it elect you, you're not getting away
that scenario isn't likely to arise again.
Before then.
I do not believe that an alliance is possible. The parties are too different.
Chris?
Yeah, no, I think Theresa's right. I can't see any universe in which Nigel Farage, I assume he must have ruled it out today, but I can't see any universe in which he would possibly consider, knowing everything I do about his politics, possibly consider supporting a Conservative Party after they completely lost control of our borders. The small boats crisis started under the Conservatives. And we had that Boris wave of migration, which is actually one of the things.
But you haven't got the message, Chris. It's new Conservative Party, new leadership from Kemi Badenoch.
Of course, yes. I forgot that after the last 16 months, we've swept away the 14 years of damage that the Conservatives did to the country. But Theresa's right the other way as well. I disagree with the Conservatives and would say a lot, and have said a lot on your show about the damage they've done to the country. But at the same time, one of the things that they were very passionate about, and one of the things that I was proud, even with a government that I didn't vote for, one of the things I was proud about was seeing that Conservative government proudly stand up to support our Ukrainian allies, and Nigel Farage wasn't there supporting it at the time. And so I can't see that Nigel Farage would support a Conservative Party after they lost control of our borders. I can't see a Conservative Party that would be able to support Reform, who they doesn't seem to believe strongly enough in defending Europe, and therefore it's just not going to happen.
But if the electoral arithmetic showed Nigel Farage the largest party and he needed a coalition with the Conservatives, which is a smaller party, He'd obviously go for that, wouldn't he?
That's not going to happen because Labour is going to be the largest party and be swept back under a majority
Theresa,
government.
Labour are constantly attacking this so-called Boris wave. Can you defend what happened there?
It was a mistake to let so many. Essentially, a big part of the problem was allowing significant freedom to bring in family dependents for both students and health and social care workers. And that meant that the numbers ballooned in a way which was completely unacceptable. And steps were taken to bring the numbers down, and they are starting now to show up in the numbers. But yes, absolutely, there were mistakes made in relation to our borders, which we would need to put right next time. If we are trusted with power again, of course we must take a tougher approach on migration. But when one looks at the situation facing this current government, the small boats crisis is even worse than it was under the Conservatives. And I think if our Rwanda scheme had been allowed to go ahead, it hadn't been cancelled by the government, we would have seen things starting to change in the Channel as they did when Australia introduced similar measures.
Rwanda was not similar to Australia.
Let's not go down that road. Jim Shannon, you're a sort of dispassionate observer here, aren't you? Because what's your analysis of the likelihood of a pact between the two?
The Conservative Party, the Conservative Unionist Party, but forgive me, Theresa. The fact of the matter is, when they were in power under Boris, we were done over at least 5 occasions that I can think of. Who stopped?
You got quite a bit of money out of it for Northern Ireland.
We got £2 billion out of it, and we used that there to improve the broadband and across all of Northern Ireland. So it was all done for our people, and everybody got that. It doesn't matter where you were. You voted for us, you didn't. You got the money. But I just want to say this, and you're right, Iain. You see, whenever the political reality of an election and the figures are turned out and the numbers game is done, then you know who's got strength and who hasn't. And at that time, you will make a decision to go into power. The Conservatives did it with the Lib Dems. I mean, they're scathing in the chamber against each other all the time. And that was probably a marriage of convenience rather than a marriage of love. And from that point of view, I would suggest that whenever the chips are down and the numbers add up, you might just go into partnership or coalition or a hung parliament with someone that you would find unpalatable to sit beside any other time. So will it be the Conservatives and the Reform on one side? Will it be, Chris, the Labour Party and maybe Corbyn's party, the left-wingers who have a very, very strong point of view as well? I believe in my heart.
Do well to make
I believe in my heart there's going to be a hung parliament, because I think the nation is divided, and the right's rising, the left's rising, and if you add those two together, it's all a recipe for a hung parliament. And you will make decisions, and you'll go into partnership. Because what's politics all about? It's about rule. It's about being in government. And if you want to be in government, sometimes you have to compromise. David Cameron compromised with the Lib Dems at the end of the day, and they suffered for it afterwards. And the coalitions are never really. I never see coalitions as something that brings forward good government. But
it did in that government, didn't it?
I did in some things, but the fact was, when it came to the 2015 and the party company, my goodness, you'd think that they'd never been in partnership, never been in government. They were fighting the bit out. So yeah, look, political reality will change people's opinion every time.
Right, thank you very much indeed. We have some more questions to come, but if you'd like to contribute to the programme, the number to call 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on that number too. It's 8:30 on LBC. Let's get the latest news headlines from Daryl Jackson.
US Democrats have released pictures and videos of Jeffrey Epstein's Caribbean island, saying it's a look behind closed doors. The images show empty courtyards with trespass signs, a dentist's chair and a spa with towels. You can see the images at lbc.co.uk. A nursery group says it's carrying out a review after a member of staff pleaded guilty to dozens of sexual offences against children. Vincent Chan worked at Bright Horizons in northwest London, which is now closed. And the Kremlin's denied claims Vladimir Putin's rejected the US proposals for peace in Ukraine. Talks between the Russian president and officials from the US yesterday failed to reach a breakthrough. LBC weather, a band of rain moving in from the southwest tonight, dry in northeast Scotland, a low of 1 degree.
This is LBC.
Things are
Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:33 on LBC. Labour MP Chris Curtis is here, former Conservative MP Theresa Villiers, Jim Shannon, Democratic Unionist MP for Strangford, and Matthew Torbitt, former Labour advisor and homelessness campaigner. Text question from Andrew. Today, Labour removed the whip from the MP Marcus Campbell Savers for voting against the inheritance tax changes, which could break up many long-standing family farms. Does the panel think Labour are right to treat this MP as a villain for voting against this? Or will this MP go down in history as a hero for being the only Labour MP to fight against this highly controversial taxation policy? I've been covering politics for, 40 years, I suppose, in one way or another, 30 years, not that old. And it's really only in recent years that MPs have had the whip withdrawn from voting against their party on an issue which is not a sort of confidence vote. Jim, this is a bit of an unfortunate development, isn't it?
I think it's poor taste by the Labour Party in relation to it. I understand there was as many as 40, 45 MPs who had expressed concern. It wouldn't be fair to name them, but we would probably all know them. Chris will know them better than I will. They have already spoken up on a number of occasions about the family inheritance tax. It's a massive issue. Labour have misjudged this greatly. They could have raised the threshold to £3, perhaps £5 million, and that would have taken a number of farmers, especially us in Northern Ireland. There's 65% of farmers in Northern Ireland will fall into this tax threshold because of what the government's doing. To suggest that you could transfer some of that to your spouse is unrealistic. The unfortunate thing about it is the Labour Party, I always hoped they would be would do the right things. I want them to do the right things, by the way. I think the people of this nation want them to do good things as well. But they misjudged this. The farmer protests are massive. I know that across Northern Ireland, all my neighbours, every one of my neighbours will fall into this category. I think what the farmers are hoping, if they don't pass away, of course, that there'll be a new government. Conservatives have said that they will abolish it. The Reformers said that they will abolish it. The Lib Dems are talking along the same line. So I think in this instance, I think the Labour Party have got it wrong. And what do they do? They take the whip off one man who has a good conscience, who sees right and wrong and makes his decision. I admire him. He's not the only one, by the way. There's a few other ones. I know that a couple of other ones have been, I know this, Chris, you probably know as well, who have been invited to meet their whip this week. So it'll be interesting to see if there's not another one. Maybe it goes. Maybe these other ones didn't. I've checked the Hansard vote because I checked it last night. Whenever the vote happened last night, there was a change of numbers in the chamber. The votes they're making the majorities about 168, 169, 175. And then whenever that amendment came last night, there was a difference of about 40 approximately from those the difference between the two sides. So some came away. There's some who voted against it, and many others abstained, is my understanding. But look, it's not too late for government to realise what they've done is wrong. And I think the farming community have been very clear, and the Conservative Party have been very clear. We've been very clear in where we are. I live in a farm in the Ards Peninsula. All my neighbours are all farmers. Ours, we don't work the farm's rented out. But I do know what the farmers are telling me. I think Labour's got it wrong. My goodness. And the whip, one of our guys who had the courage of his convictions, I tell you what, grow up, Labour. Honestly, it's ridiculous.
Well, of course, Marcus Campbell-Savers, I think, is the son of Dale Campbell-Savers, who was a very rebellious Labour MP back in the 80s and 90s. And I think during the Blair government, he rebelled quite often. I get... You're a Labour MP, you have the Labour whip, so I can't ask you to be too critical about this, but does this make you feel a little uncomfortable, Chris?
Well, there's two questions, right? There's the question of the policy, which, if it's all right, I'll park for a minute. I'm happy to have a conversation about the policy. And then there's the question about what the response is if you disagree with the policy. I'd make 2 points. Firstly, this is a budget. Historically, it is kind of considered a vote of confidence in the government. If you can't pass a budget, you cannot govern. So it is important to do so. And inside a budget, budgets are always going to be a pick and mix. You are not always going to, as an MP, support everything that was within the budget. There are things from time to time, I'm not going to tell you them, that I might feel a bit more uncomfortable about. But it is a package. It is important to get past a budget where one side adds up to the other in order to be able to govern the country effectively and continue to support our public services and not repeat Liz Truss.
But he presumably was acting on behalf of his constituency. I mean, I don't know what his constituency.
Budgets are a little bit different, in fairness. I would argue budgets are a little bit different.
Yeah, but this wasn't a vote on the whole budget.
You can't end up... No, but obviously if an amendment on the budget passes, then the entire budget doesn't stack up because the maths doesn't stack up. You don't meet your fiscal rules. You end up in the territory of Liz Truss.
There was no danger of it not passing, given the majority.
But that's not the point, is it? You have to apply rules to ensure that doesn't happen on something that is so important as the economic confidence in the country. So you do have to apply slightly stricter rules to the budget. On the other section of the question, though, look, I'm not going to sit here and call Marcus a villain from the slightest. I don't have any less respect for him as a person for having done this. Like Jim said, sometimes in politics you feel, for whatever reason, that you cannot vote for something because of that. Now, in this case, there did have to be consequences because it is a budget
did it
vote.
Have to be the whip being withdrawn? If this had happened, say, for example, in the Thatcher government. The Thatcher government didn't withdraw the whip, as far as I remember, from anybody, and there were plenty of Tory MPs.
Never did it.
Plenty of Tory MPs voted against measures in that government. But I mean, it might have been made clear that you're not going to become a minister if you keep doing this. But I mean, in the government's defence, of course, there is the possibility that he didn't tell them that he was going to vote against, and if you do that, I mean, then be careful what you wish for. If you go to the whip and say, look, I can't support this. My constituents will hang me for this if I support this. Usually the whips will be relatively understanding, but only if you give them due warning.
I cannot tell you what conversations happened between Marcus and the whips, but I just would say on this, on the question of the whips specifically on this, we do have to remember it is a budget. It is correct that it is considered closer to a vote of confidence because it is so important to keep our public services going, to economic confidence in the country, that government is able to pass a budget.
It's not a great look. I think you've pointed out other governments haven't done it normally because they have felt secure in their position normally, I think, and normally in control. I think because we've seen previously in recent history under this government backbenchers voting with their feet and therefore policies not being passed like welfare reform, they'll be concerned. And I think you're right. Listen, I've worked for whips in the past, and I think if you let them know, there'll be a little bit more understanding. But Jim's right. There was a discrepancy during that amendment because of many Labour rural MPs that abstained. Therefore, you won't be as understanding because you've had the same conversation with 40 others and you've got to lump it, unfortunately, and walk through. I imagine, because Marcus Campbell-Savers isn't a sort of serial rebeller, he'll go down quite well in his constituency for doing the right thing. He's the MP in Penrith, very rural area. I imagine there's many farmers and he's getting it in the neck. he'll do 6 months and he'll be back in and all will be fine and everybody will get on with it. But I do worry about where we head with this sort of stuff. And if you cannot be secure with the majority that Keir Starmer's currently got, it's going to be a long old 4 years, I think.
It already feels... No, I won't say that. Let's have a follow-up call. It's Manesh in Southall. Hello, Manesh, yes, you are on the line. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Iain, and good evening to the panel. My question to the panel is, when you got Rachel Reeves and this Labour Party saying that they're admitting that there's a reduction in the private sector productivity, that suggests to me is negative growth. And if this is the party that's suggesting that they want to improve growth, how is taxing the private sector going to help that? It's actually going to make it worse. And more importantly, they should look at themselves first in the public sector productivity first before asking questions about the private sector. Well, what does the panel think about that?
Theresa.
We have a productivity problem in this country. You're absolutely right to highlight it. And
have had for decades.
And, well, certainly for the last 20 years or so, there's been a significant problem with it. But what is not helping is extra taxes on the business community. I think Labour's decision to go for high spend, high tax us more to fund benefits, that is not good for our competitiveness as a nation. It's not good for our productivity. Yes, we all hope that AI is going to generate some real productivity gains, but it is also absolutely crucial that we have discipline when it comes to the public spending. The civil service is hugely larger now than it was in 2016. Slimming it down should be a priority for the government, as well as reform of the benefits bill so that we get more people into work and have fewer people dependent on benefits. And if we do that, we have a more productive economy.
Can I ask a question? Is that allowed?
Well, you're supposed to be answering one.
I can answer one as well.
Feel free.
What I've never sort of heard from the Conservatives is the welfare bill continue to rise dramatically, really, under the Conservatives, and looks set to do so, and we need to fix that. And I believe very strongly that we need to be far bolder in how we approach welfare reform. But there never seems to have been very much reflection for the Conservatives why all that kind of harsh rhetoric and everything you tried to do didn't end up bringing down the welfare bill. Why you tried all of that and it didn't work. And I think that's an important question, because my fear is the argument I hear from the Conservatives is what you need to do is what we did when we were in government to welfare reform: be harsh, tell people to go back to work, cut their spending, and then suddenly the bill will come down. But if that worked, then we wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. It clearly didn't. That clearly isn't an approach to bringing the welfare bill down.
We believe in a benefit system that helps people in need. We believe in a generous benefit system, but there are limits to what is affordable. And we also believe that people on benefits should face some of the similar choices that people who are not on benefits face in terms of the size of families, for instance. We created one of the biggest reforms of the welfare system since the 1940s with university. No, are you seriously saying we should abolish universal credit? We're not going to.
No, Chris, please. We're going way off the subject of Manesh's call, so let's get a view from Jim.
Certainly high productivity. Can I just make a couple of quick comments, maybe I could? Look, the budgets, and Chris is right, budgets are always like a curate's egg. You'll see something that you like. What I like in it, I like the £370 million extra pound for Northern Ireland. I like the £17 million for the business expansion plan. I love I agree 100% with the two-child limit tax being removed, because there's 440,000 children in Northern Ireland. 103,000 of those are in poverty. This has the potential to take them out of poverty. So I see the benefits of some of those things. Minuses in relation to it, the pensioners, give them an extra £600. What happens? They then find themselves in a threshold where they're paying tax. So they give it with the left hand, take it back with the right. Pensioners, I think in particular, will suffer greatly to this. I say this, Chris, I'm just telling you what people tell me. I haven't met one business person who has told me they see something good in this budget. that worries me. Because Rachel Reeves, when she came at the beginning, she says the economy is our number one priority, and that was good news, and that's what I wanted to see, because it's how the economy, how it works, how it succeeds, how it gets its goals. That helps pay for all the. It helps pay for the benefits. It helps pay for those things. But if you haven't got a strong economy, I mean, I think maybe I read the other day there, unemployment is up, vacancies are down. So there are trends in the economic picture that worry me greatly. I think she needs to do more, and she's a good lady, but I don't see anything in this for business.
All right, Matthew Torbitt.
Briefly, I think it's largely the reason why she's done what she's done is it was a budget for political survival, as many people outside have seen. I think with regards to the growth problem and the welfare, to sort of bring Chris and Theresa together, and actually Chris has been very outspoken on welfare reform and it's quite a brave voice in the Labour Party, I would say. I think you can cut welfare reform by about 7.6 billion. You take people off universal credit health aspect and PIP. If you've got mild mental health issues, you save 7.6 billion of a welfare budget that's going to hit 130 billion by 2030. And we've got to factor in COVID. Since COVID, it's ballooned £20 billion. Something's gone wrong. You could use $1 billion of the 7.6 billion by funding talking therapy. That'll buy you 1.5 million appointments for people to get talking therapy, and to come full circle, the more people that are in work paying tax and national insurance, the better for our growth, surely.
Great. We will move on to another question in a moment. I see that it's about water in Tunbridge Wells. 8:47.
This is LBC.
40 million.
Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:49. We have Jim, Shannon, Theresa, Villiers. I always say Villiers, and it's Villiers, isn't it? I must get it right. I've known you long enough by now. Tris Curtis, can't pronounce his name incorrectly. Labour MP for Milton Keynes. Now, Matthew Torbitt, former Labour advisor, you are now a fellow of the Centre for Social Justice, a think tank created by Ian Duncan Smith.
Yes.
How's that come about?
They reached out to me. They want to push a scheme called Housing First. Some people may or may not know. The idea is in this country of homelessness, we do treatment first. So if you want to access long-term accommodation, you've got to kick the drug habit, the alcohol habit, get the mental health support you might have for PTSD. There was a conception in New York in the 90s called Housing First. Finland took it on and have all but eradicated rough sleeping. And the idea is you access the housing first and you get the wraparound care that comes with it. So there's many of the things the CSJ do that I might not necessarily agree with, but they're very good, competent, intelligent people getting stuff done. So I can't complain. Very happy to be there.
Let's go to Chris in Stubbington. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Ian. In Tunbridge Wells,
24,000 people have been issued a boil-only notice and had no water for 5 days. Is it time for water bosses to be jailed?
OK, well, that's certainly a point of view. Many in Tunbridge Wells would share it. Now, these homes in Kent did finally have their water supply restored today, but residents have still been told to boil before drinking the water. The Liberal Democrats say the Chief Executive of South East Water, Dave Hinton, should resign over this week's events. Even they aren't calling for him to be jailed. Just to reassure my panel that despite living in Tunbridge Wells, I actually do have water, and I did have a shower this morning. Right. Where should we start with this? Matthew Torbitt.
I don't know about jailed. It would be nice for people to feel like bosses are held accountable in situations like this. Not too dissimilarly, I live in Oxfordshire, and we've had the ridiculous fly tipping I saw in Cherwell, where it's 20 foot high and 150 metres long. And you wonder what you have things like the Environment Agency for if this has been going on for months, and who's going to pay, and it's going to cost more than the district council's yearly budget. And you go, so what really happens with this? I think there's an argument certainly along the lines of probably nationalisation. At least there's somebody you can hold accountable if it's the government that is running things.
God, don't send me to jail if we nationalise them.
I would never wish anything like that upon you, Chris.
But there is a regulator.
There is, but the problem is it seems to me it's quite toothless. And what will happen? Well, there might be a fine. Water companies, energy companies, whoever it is fined, and then that ultimately gets passed on to the consumer, and you've only got so many places you can turn to for things like water. Therefore, you're stuck really with a Hobson's choice of inadequate services, and you pay an absolute premium for. So jailed will have to see what comes from it. It's horrific what's gone on. I really mean that. It's terrible the way businesses are losing out on people that can't have showers in that area, so they're going elsewhere, and it's impacting everybody other than the water bosses. So
well, luckily the local hospital is still functioning because they had the foresight to actually have their own water supply. But I mean, think if a hospital, because loads of pubs, loads of restaurants, the hospitality sector is losing thousands. Let's widen this out a little bit, though, to wider resilience, because you think, well, if this happens in one town, they can't get water. I mean, in the wider scheme of things, you can say, well, that's not a massive issue. But there is a possibility, like the whole banking system could go down in the country, or the internet could stop functioning because of some attack from somewhere. As a country and as individuals, are we resilient enough? I mean, after this happened the last time in Tunbridge Wells, did we all go out and buy 20 litres of water just for emergencies? I suspect most people didn't, Jim.
Well, I think we need to point the finger at the people who made the mistake. It's not the first time, by the way, that it's happened. It's the second time. I watched the news tonight, and a gentleman was telling in one of the hotels he was in, they were carrying buckets of water up the stairs to the toilets to flush the toilets.
Yeah.
There were bottles of water sitting outside. I mean, in this modern society that we live in, if you haven't got the basics of water, or you haven't got the basics of electricity or energy, then you have serious problems. Now, the question I asked 3 years ago when it went wrong, lots of commitments to change it, to do better. 3 years later, the same thing happens again. Okay, yes, there is a body there to make them accountable, but it never seems to have any teeth. And they do something wrong, and everyone, that's terrible. And then 3 months later, 6 months later, it happens again. Chief executives, the directors, they get their dividends. They find themselves with, well, we're okay. Our water's running in our house. Oh, by the way, in this nine bedroom mansion that I have, and I can spend my time in Spain. Sure, if it isn't working out here. The ordinary person loses every time, so it bothers me that, and I think there's an accountability that needs to be done, and I'm hoping that this government, with respect to the last government, it happened regularly all across the country in relation to water. And there always was plenty of words said, nothing ever happened. The election changed, and that was a major issue for many of the constituencies in the south of England and across England as well. And there's now a willingness, I believe, and a necessity to make the changes. I'm hoping that the Labour Party can kick back sides and make it happen, and have got to. I think it's quite inconceivable that people can't have water in their houses in this day and age.
When I saw this question coming up, I texted my partner and said, "Is the water back on?" Because he's sort of following this in minute by minute. And he says, yes, in some places, but as Chris said, South East Water have just issued this notice. Let me read it to you. And imagine if you were living in Tunbridge Wells and you got this. Water boil notice in place for at least 10 days. What do you need to know? What should I do? Customers have been advised to boil water before drinking it, washing and preparing food and brushing their teeth. Water for pets should also be boiled, but cooled before they consume. Thanks for that bit of advice. Boiling water for 1 minute is enough, South East Water says. Dishwashers can be used if they're set to a temperature of 65 degrees centigrade or above. So you can't actually have a shower for 10 days, and if you fill a bath, you've got to boil the water before it goes in the bath. Theresa?
It's absolutely intolerable. Intolerable. It cannot continue. They have got to fix this. They absolutely have to find a way to fix this. And on the broader point you're making about resilience, clearly it's the first duty of any government and local council to be ready for crisis and to have a good plan to deal with it. The area which worries me is cyber resilience in this country. Massively. We are so dependent on the online world, and we've seen examples of the devastating impact of, for example, the Marks and Spencer cyber attack. Yeah. And believe me, cyber attacks could be even worse than that. So every business, every individual should be focusing on making sure they're as cyber secure as possible, particularly with the threats we face from China and Russia.
I've had several people ask me over the last 48 hours, why have you got water and the other residents of Tunbridge Wells haven't? Well, if you really want to know, I live in a village called Pembury, which is just on the outskirts of Tunbridge Wells. And this problem actually comes from the Pembury water treatment plant. But because I'm on the edge of the village, I get my water from Matfield. Thank goodness. Otherwise, you wouldn't. Well, Theresa, you and Chris certainly wouldn't want to sit next to me. Chris?
Well, look, my first thought is obviously it's a scandal. I don't think it's necessarily a case of throwing one guy in jail, but it is years of underinvestment in our water industry driven by a regulator that's prioritised paying dividends over holding water companies to account and often keeping bills down in the short term rather than prioritising that longer term investment. That's my first thought. My second thought is that out there somewhere there is a parallel universe where the four of us are sitting here doing cross questions with Andrew Marr this evening, going down the line to MP for Tunbridge Wells, Iain Dale, who's delivering water to local residents, being a fantastic constituency MP in the face of this crisis.
Just on that, I saw on Twitter yesterday, because Mike Martin, the Lib Dem MP, I mean, to be fair to him, he has been at the forefront of this, as you can imagine, and somebody tweeted, I wonder what would have happened if Iain Dale or Nigel Farage had been our MP. And I resisted replying, I would have done exactly the same as Mike Martin, because that's what good constituency MPs do. So on that note of cross-party consensus, let's go to our fun question. Thanks for that, Chris, by the way. That delays your re-invitation by at least 3 months. Sebastian is in Taplow. He says, Rachel Reeves has been accused of overstating just how good at chess she was as a child, with her claim that she was the under-14 national champion for girls having been questioned. She's still a regular chess player. So what's your surprising skill? Theresa?
I do manage to get around 5 kilometres at park run on a Saturday morning. Not very quickly.
What's the time? What's the time?
Around sort of 31.
Well, that's 10 minutes faster than I ever managed. I think that's good. Jim?
I'm not a chess player. I'm going to get a lot of hate mail out of this. I do like shooting. It's always been my sport. Still my sport.
Shooting what?
Shooting pheasants, ducks, pigeons, and I love it. My best bit of shooting I ever did was I went overseas shooting, and my best bit of shooting, I'll never do that in the rest of my life, because you get older and you slow down and your reflexes aren't as sharp. I shot 94 out of 100 birds.
94 in one session? In
one session.
Jim.Shannon at Parliament.
I expect lots of hate mail now. Lots of hate mail coming.
I can do 150 pogo stick jumps in a minute.
That is very impressive. That was the best.
Wow. The best secret skill.
How did that even come out?
I had a pogo stick in the back garden, and I was reading through Guinness World Records, and I saw what the world record was, and I was like, see if I can beat that. It was 190 or something at the time. I couldn't quite get there. But.
Right, next time you're on Cross Question, bring your pogo stick, and let's see if we can be a record breaker. Matthew.
I was, because I've got no ACL at the minute. I was a keen footballer growing up, and I sort of probably.
I could see you as a footballer.
I was all right. I was a runner. I worked hard. I did better than the lads that were talented and didn't want to work hard.
I can see you as a sort of Norman Hunter style, bite your legs defender.
You must have seen me play before.
Chopper Harris. Chopper Harris.
I trained and played for different Football League clubs growing up.
Did you?
Yeah, during COVID, I came back, did a bit of semi-pro, scored in the FA Cup. I can take that one to the grave, qualifying round. So
things we find out about.
No, I was all right. You know, but that's something I was proud of. I had some good memories and stuff, so it's good.
Well, I won the Medway Ports Golf Championship in 1992, and there must be a record of that in case somebody thinks I'm overclaiming. Right, thank you all very much indeed for coming in today. On Monday's panel, we have former Conservative Education Secretary Justine Greening, Liberal Democrat frontbencher Anna Sabine, and The Spectator's Deputy Political Editor James Heal, and presumably a Labour representative too, as yet unnamed. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to return to one of the questions that we were talking about in Cross Question. It's the question of whether Reform UK and the Conservatives should get the band back together, essentially, and if they want to beat Labour at the next election, isn't that the thing to do? Form some sort of pre-election pact or even merge the parties. It is thought that Nigel Farage has said this at a meeting of donors, but has now publicly denied it. What's your view?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, images of Jeffrey Epstein's Caribbean island have been released, which the Democrats say display a harrowing look behind closed doors. They show empty courtyards, a room with a dentist chair, bedrooms and towels piled up in a villa. Documents related to the late paedophile will likely emerge soon and could